Today is the day you're going to put a vision board together that comes true, and not just because you dreamed bigger, but because you've done it differently. This is where I'm going to air out a little bit of my beef with how vision boards are perceived, because the ones you do see online actually don't work. I've seen so much vision boarding content that tells you it's about manifesting, that you should always strive higher, bigger, scarier goals, and just believe harder. Now, there is something to manifesting, but that's more about the mindset. Without any action, it's really just a wish, the same way that you would be manifesting a lottery win every time you buy a lottery ticket. Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Alexandra, or you may know me as Ola, and around here we don't gatekeep. I love sprinkling a little bit of science to help us build a life that feels as good as it looks. This is our space to grow, figure things out as we go along, and just enjoy the overall process. Let's get into it. Let me explain why manifesting and vision boarding and taking that kind of approach doesn't necessarily work. When your vision board is filled with far off identity outcomes, for example, things like a dream body, a six-figure salary, or whatever you perceive as perfect or like a perfect life, your brain tends to file this under, okay, cool, but also vaguely threatening, and I don't really know how to action this. I say threatening because our brains thrive on predictability and comfort, so seeking a change in your identity can be posed as a threat to your brain because you're literally attacking your current present sense of self. This type of vision boarding can actually trigger some subtle stress responses, comparison, and something called cognitive dissonance, and by this I mean literally this isn't my reality. And by doing so, you're creating avoidance instead of motivation. So instead of building that momentum that you're craving, you're building detachment towards your goals instead, which is obviously not helping to achieve them in the first place. What vision huge culture gets wrong is that when you're constantly visualizing an outcome that is easily socially compared, is emotionally charged, and is technically rare for your current stage, now I'm saying this very gently, your brain does two very unhelpful things. Now, first one is premature pressure, so you start holding yourself to standards of someone that's already much further ahead in the process without having the infrastructure and foundations to keep the identity stable for you in the first place. So with that, you create a bit of a cycle, and it's like a gap, and with this gap, you then enter this kind of cycle of shaming yourself because you're not doing enough to get yourself to that goal. You then get overwhelmed because you're not getting there fast enough, and then eventually you freeze, and this means you end up at a stage where you're ending up to basically ditching that goal altogether. And the second one being the all or nothing mindset, or better known as intensity, which, you know what, I'm going to put up my hand and say that I am very guilty of this myself. So essentially your brain goes, if we're not doing this big, why do we even bother? And this isn't about laziness, it's about threat avoidance more than anything. And unfortunately, the internet calls this self-sabotage, while it's really just miscalculated goal exposure. Now, before we jump in and start building our 2026 vision boards, I actually wanted to show you what I put on my 2025 vision board this time last year using the principles of everything that you see online at the moment. And I'm going to be open and honest and say that I went big. I literally became so outcome obsessed, and I leaned very heavily into these kind of big and scary goals, which, you know, like looking back on it now and reflecting and reviewing, I think this was one of the main reasons why I ended up in like a downward spiral for quite a lot of 2025, which caused me chronic eye twitching and a lot of pressure and stress. Now, with that being said, there are some things on this board behind me that did come true, so let's just dive into it. Now, I may as well just rip the plaster off straight away and say that I put the silver plaque from YouTube on my board, despite the fact that I have never recorded a long form video, never scripted, never edited anything to that scale, and I also didn't have a plan or like a structure and direction to allow myself the time to develop skills and the confidence in being in front of the camera. Now, for a little bit of context, I have given plenty of presentations over the 1 hour mark to academics, industry leaders in pharmaceuticals, and regulatory authorities, but this is not the level that I was used to, especially when it came to YouTube. And I think I overestimated and underestimated myself in terms of how much time and how much I would need to invest into myself. I just had very high expectations of myself to begin with. Now, you've actually heard me say the most important part, and it's the fact that I didn't give myself the time and space to learn. And to be honest, it wasn't the fact that I thought it would be easy or the fact that I was being delusional. I just had very high expectations of myself to begin with, which was the whole issue from the get-go, because I was keeping myself up to standards of someone that had done YouTube for like 5 to 10 years. And because I was visualizing this little silver plaque all the time, I was constantly activating the RAS system, which I'll touch on in a little bit. But because I was focusing on an outcome that was distant and uncertain, my brain didn't know how to prioritize daily actions that would help me like get into the process of, you know, doing like scripting consistently, editing and so on and so forth to actually build a YouTube channel. Now of course, in hindsight, you know, 2020, if I put photos of, for example, a camera recording or someone like editing a script on a laptop, or just like being in the process of editing or whatever, that would have been a lot better for my brain, because I would have then been able to prioritize small daily actions, even if it's for 20 minutes, because my brain would be like, okay, well, we know what to do with that, like we can continue, sort of thing, rather than being obsessed about something that's like at the very end. Now instead, I actually built a very intense and overwhelming environment for myself, and posting, whether it was bi-weekly or monthly, just felt insignificant, and this led to a situation where I became, or like rather I leaned into a lot to the perfectionism. So I was in that kind of frozen state because I wouldn't even action the work, because I was like, well, if it's not big or if it's not perfect, like why am I bothering doing it in the first place? Now the next thing you'll notice is the fact that my board is very busy, and I put on like a lot of photos that have a lot of emotional charge for me, and I'm not going to go through every single one of them, like we'd be here all day, but essentially I skipped the development stages. I didn't, you know, celebrate the little wins, and I just became really paralysed and overwhelmed because I just put on so much there that like I didn't even know what to focus on. And my brain also fell trap into this kind of like not until X happens, which I know like a lot of us feed into quite a lot during the year. So every big goal that I've put on the board created this kind of pressure to execute as well, which meant that I felt even more overwhelmed, and this literally feeds back into this kind of vision big culture, because when you put so many things that are like big for you, that you want a lot of change and they're emotionally charged for you, instead of, you know, building that momentum, you're just feeling paralyzed and overwhelmed because your brain just doesn't know what to prioritize. Now in terms of things that did come true, I had a lot of like little snippets of like being on holiday with, you know, visualizing being on holiday with my partner or being on holiday with my friends. And these things did come true, and I'm really proud of that, because I have been knees deep in saving mode for my wedding, and this really mattered to me. Now I've actually touched on this already, but actually seeing like my friends was a big one for me, because a lot of my close friends don't actually live nearby. A lot of them live overseas or like down south in the UK. So the fact that we've made time to see each other, and one of my long besties that lives up north of Scotland, I've seen her quite a few times too, and this was almost like the biggest goal that I did have, to spend more time with my family and friends. Which brings me on to these little photos, and they're interesting because they're literally just of like a family sitting around a fireplace, and I've got one more here. And what's interesting is the fact that I actually unintentionally took a photo that's very similar to this over the summer with my family. So yeah, I was very pleased when I was reviewing this, and it made me feel all kind of like cozy on the inside, you know. Now the other thing that was on my vision board was reading books, and I read a lot of books in 2025. I think I'm nearing almost 50 books that year alone. Yeah, like once I like an author and I see a series, I'm like, I read it. But I also got a Kindle, so I read even more, and I'm really happy with myself because this is one of the ways I de-stress. Now another one is the wee iced coffee and the flowers. So I actually now buy myself flowers on Sundays, and it's became like a little ritual. During the summer I'm happy to go get a wee iced coffee, and yeah, like, so this actually did come true as well. Now in terms of my favourite ones that actually did come true are the ones of like that we're visualizing spending time with my partner. And the reason why I'm really pleased is because we had an engagement shoot last year over the summer, and we've essentially like recreated some of these photos, and it's just really nice to look back on, and I'm very happy that I took the time to like capture that engaged era, because I think it's really like overlooked, especially when you have a wedding to plan. So this isn't to say that vision boarding doesn't work, but I think you can see a pattern here. Everything that was centered around big leaps, a lot of change and timelines didn't come true, but things that were already rooted in my life and things that didn't seem too far off were actioned and did come true. So when I sat down to look for images for my 2026 vision board, I didn't ask myself, what do I want? I asked myself, what did I action last year? And most importantly, I reflected on how last year felt, and I'm sure you've already heard me say that I felt very stressed and I had chronic eye twitching, and I just didn't want to feel that way this year, especially with it being my wedding year and with so many things happening like within this year alone. Now I quickly just want to touch on something that will completely change the way you apply vision boarding, and it's something that's rooted in neuroscience and something that your brain and body does every single day. I want to talk about the reticular activating system, RAS, which I've mentioned earlier, and this is the part that actually ties everything together. The RAS is a network of neurons in your brainstem that connects the brain to the spinal cord, and its role is to filter information. The way I like to think about it is it's like a spotlight operator, or you put like a glasses on and they have super laser focus, and its function is to basically decide what is important and what is worth acting on. And it doesn't prioritize things equally, and this is the part that's really important to understand. The RAS prioritizes based on three main categories. Number one is the relevance to your plans and your intentions. So if your brain sees something that looks aligned to your plans, it will highlight it for you. Number two, novelty and change, and that's because unexpected things that happen could be important and you might need to action them or do something about them. And number three, your emotional response. So things that trigger a strong emotional response, whether it's positive or negative, will highlight more value for your brain and therefore grab more attention. So the RAS isn't a wish detector, it's a relevance filter, and it essentially flags things to your brain that are useful, that you can action, that are easy to repeat, and things that you need to act on straight away, as well as things that reinforce emotion. And this is where vision boarding comes in. So when you start visioning things that are really far off and distant in terms of your goal, your brain doesn't know how to get there, and it doesn't prioritize those daily tasks for you because it doesn't know how to align them with your plans. So essentially it doesn't prioritize that behavior to help you make that process change in the first place. And this is why I've shifted towards action-based vision boarding. Rather than visualizing outcomes, I'm going to be visualizing actions to help me achieve my goals. And here's why this works. First, it reduces the heat. Your brain loves doing things that feels doable. It lowers the activation of the amygdala and it keeps you in a calm and forward-facing state rather than like overwhelmed and not knowing what to prioritize. Secondly, it strengthens the habit loop formation. So essentially having that repeated exposure to things that you want to implement in your life, such as gym sessions or daily walks or protein-rich meals, will then reinforce the cue routine reward cycle, which is where change actually sticks. Number three, it trains RAS correctly. When your vision board has things like environments, routines, and micro actions, your brain will naturally start scanning for opportunities to execute these rather than fantasize. And this is absolute gold because this is how a change that lasts is created. And fourth, it builds an identity indirectly. So instead of having to constantly tell yourself, I am X, you're literally showing your brain, this is what a person like me does, and your identity then emerges as a byproduct in a regulated and a natural way rather than feeling the pressure to become something else. And you might be wondering, what about my goals? And the goals still matter, but they just don't dominate the visual field. They're acting as a compass, your true north. They're kept simple, low in emotion, and most importantly, not constantly stared at. Your actions, on the other hand, are your map, and these are the things that you want to reinforce every single day. And this brings me to the most important part. A good vision board starts with the brain's job description. Now, this may come as a surprise, but the brain's primary role is prediction and energy conservation, not wish fulfillment. Who'd have thought, right? So the best types of vision boards lower uncertainty, lower threat, because of course change equals threat to your current sense of self, and they reinforce patterns that your brain can easily repeat. If your vision board creates things like pressure, comparison, urgency, or feels like 3 Mount Everest to climb, it's actually working against your biology. Okay, now that we have our receipts, we're ready to build that 2026 vision board that will help us support our goals and actually help us achieve what we want from the year. Now, when it came to choosing the vision pictures, I guided myself in 2 main ways. Number one, I picture the steps that help me get to my goal, and these act as the daily actions. So for example, if you've got a savings goal, this could be applied in a way where you've got pictures of the environment and the routine. So for example, having a cute desk setup or going for a wee coffee date where you're reviewing your finances. So essentially you need to think about the cues for your brain to help you get you there. And step number two adds an additional layer to this, and this is something that's deeply rooted in neuroscience, and I've done this with my board this year, and I have used my own photos. Let me explain why this is so powerful. So first of all, the brain is very biased towards the self, and there's this well-established concept of the self-reference effect, and this essentially means that the information that is directly related to you is processed more deeply, it's more easily remembered and actioned because it feels more attainable and believable. When you put yourself in the image, your brain will literally instantly recognize as it being part of your life. So you don't have to keep telling yourself and repeat that I am this person or I am X, because you're showing the brain that you are already that person. And this is something that we've touched on earlier, that you're building on this identity as a byproduct and very naturally. You're not asking your brain to become someone else, you're only asking to repeat a familiar pattern, which is incredibly powerful. Secondly, it reduces the attachment and comparison, and this is because when you're using photos of luxury lifestyles or certain bodies or things that are far off from your current identity, your brain often files this as, okay, that's cool, I don't know how to do this is not who I am, so we're not going to action this. That dissonance can create feelings of pressure, comparison, and disengagement. By using your own photos, that conflict disappears because your brain's like, ah, yes, we've done this before, we know how to, let's do this. And with that safety comes repeatability, and with that repeatability, you're forming a habit. Thirdly, you're starting to train your RAS correctly. So when you're showing yourself, for example, at the gym or with your family, and in environments you already access, your brain will naturally start scanning for opportunities to make these things happen. So this includes things like time windows, locations, habits, literally anything that is already accessible to you. So instead of focusing on what you're lacking, it actually looks at what you already have and it's like, oh yes, this again, let's do it. And you're then naturally building consistency without having to force it. And lastly, it reinforces the identity rather than forcing it. So rather than saying to yourself, I want to get into shape or I must get into shape, you're just showing your brain, I am already in the process of getting into shape. And this is really important for creating a change that lasts, because change is easier to be built on continuum rather than complete reinvention. So here's the rule that I'm using. If it's not part of your life yet, don't visualize the outcome. Visualize the actions that actually get you there. If you want more family time, show yourself in photos with your family. If you want to reach some fitness goals, show yourself already doing the action, whether it's being, I don't know, at the gym, take a selfie, or for myself, for example, I put some photos from the gym I actually go to because it's very aesthetically pleasing and I just really like being there. So essentially focus on the environments, on the routines and things that are already around you that you can build on. Now, I just want to touch on something, that if you want to build something that's completely new, don't focus on the price, focus on the actual process and just break it down for yourself rather than like sticking, for example, like that silver YouTube plaque, because that goal, obviously it's great to achieve, but there's a backlog of like foundations that you need to, you know, create and get yourself in that first place. So as I mentioned, in hindsight, I would have done this differently this time last year if I actually looked into the science and, you know, actually taken a step back and put my scientist brain on. Now, of course, your goals still matter and they still exist. And one thing that I've done is I actually written on the back of these photos to basically show to myself what my true north is, but the actions and the things that I actually need to do in my daily life is what's represented on my board. I think this is really important because this is literally a chance to visualize your life and not someone else's. And this time last year I put on like a lot of pretty photos that didn't really have a meaning to me either, but then at the same time I went on the complete extreme as well with putting things that were so huge that I felt completely paralyzed. So it's just being mindful of, you know, how much pressure you're putting on yourself, but also like make it fun. And I think one of the best things that we can do, and this is what I've done this year as well, is I've actually went through my iPhone camera roll and I looked through all the photos that I've taken in that year, particularly month by month, because I feel like time just merges sometimes and you just forget what you've done. And it was such a nice exercise because it made me realise that I've done a lot more than what I give myself credit for. And I also spent a lot more time with my family and my friends than I thought I did. So, you know, we take photos of everything and anything nowadays. So honestly, go through your archives, go look through your photos and enjoy the process of putting your vision board together. Honestly, if I could, I would just say to myself, like literally like shake myself this time last year and be like, stop putting photos on your vision board that you don't even know how you can fit in your current life. I strongly recommend that you just take some time to reflect on last year's, whether it's your vision board or your goals and your intentions, and do it without judgment and just focus on things that actually happened and things that you genuinely enjoyed rather than things that you were forcing. And most importantly, the actions that you have repeated. And this is very important because it'll be much easier to build on these when they're already part of your routine. This isn't about like changing everything in your life and overhauling everything for this year ahead. It's about being focused on that kind of transformation and the change you're looking to create. And the easiest way is to do it by incorporating small changes into things you already do, and those really compound over time. I've mentioned this previously, that change at first is slow, but then it builds momentum and it snowballs, and it's much easier to build something big on something that already has foundation. And those small little wins will honestly compound to something amazing if you trust the process. And I just want to say that you are allowed to have big and scary goals. These just don't need to be plastered on a vision board that you're looking at every single day, that's going to cause you comparison, that pressure and intensity to like get everything done yesterday, because you don't need that kind of pressure weight on you daily. And I just want to call this out because this is literally all you see on social media, that you need to dream bigger, strive for higher, that you need to be doing X to be successful, and you know, everything needs to be done like yesterday. And you see people doing all these like amazing things, which again, they're just a highlight reel and they make us feel like we're completely behind. And I just want to say, this doesn't have to be your experience, because this is not the reality, and you are allowed to be very aligned with your own goals and, you know, keep a calm, consistent pace and actually work on something that truly matters to you. You don't need to absorb people's content and think you need to do exactly what they're doing to be successful. Now, in case you're wondering what I actually put on my board this year, so I'm getting married, so there's a few photos that I have put, you know, around the wedding, and I've got a wee photo from the venue, from our engagement shoot, the kind of style of cake that I'm after. And then just, we want like a wee mini moon after our wedding, and we want it to either be like a wee short break somewhere in Europe or like a wee sunny destination. And then I have put my gym selfies with my friend, because I want to be spending more time with my friends but also be around people when I go to the gym. I really enjoy it. Of course, like food that is nutritious and high in protein, the gym aesthetic, and I actually put a photo of me picking up my wedding dress. And this is because we are working on feeling, you know, our best for our weddings. This is what a lot of brides do, I know there's a lot of pressure, you know, feeling and being a certain way for your wedding, and I'm certainly feeling that pressure, but I'm just trying to kind of compartmentalize it a little bit differently and focus on the good environments and the things that are making me feel good, rather than making me feel like I need to be at X destination. Like, no, like this is not what 2026 is about. I say picking up my wedding dress, I picked out my wedding dress on that day. But as you can also see, I have left quite a lot of my board empty. And this is because I want to be very present this year, and I'm going to do a bit of scrapbooking and just kind of review how the month's been, and like, you know, cute photos or whatever I've done in that month, even if it means like me going on my daily walk, like I'm going to stick a photo from that. But that also gives me some room in case I pick up a new hobby or a project or something comes along that I'm really enjoying, and you know what, it becomes important for me, I'm going to stick it on there. And I didn't want to just set everything in stone for the year ahead. I want to have that kind of, you know, still have that flexibility and I guess spontaneity as well. So yeah, this is my board, and I'm really excited to put it up above my working desk. So this is what I'm going to be looking at every day. And that's all for today. I hope you're feeling fired up and inspired to create your 2026 vision board. And I just want to say that 2026 is not a sprint. It is a marathon, and it's also okay if you don't have all of your goals figured out in January. You don't have to know what you're going to achieve by summer. You can have some room, you know, to think about what you want to do. You can stick it on your board, look at the consolidation and see how it feels, and then you can reassess. With this approach, you're literally teaching your brain that consistency matters more over intensity, which is what will get you to your destination, rather than burning yourself out within the first like 2 quarters of the year and then calling it quits on your goals. And gently, I just want to say that you don't have to have everything figured out by the end of January. Like, you are allowed to lay those foundations and consolidate your plans, your intentions over a longer period of time. There's this really good saying called hurry up and wait. If you try to wish your way through everything that you've put on your vision board that is big and scary without, you know, taking the time to, you know, build those foundations, give yourself the time to learn and enjoy the experience of change, you're going to have to wait anyway. So like, what are you in a rush for? And in the end, things take time to compound, so you may as well just enjoy the process rather than wish your life away and live in the future. It's just something to think about. It's something I'm really trying to catch myself out anytime I like project into the future, because I'm like, no, like, what is happening now? Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely week and you're enjoying your January wherever you are. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!